governor tend to get, and are doing some good things. Before I bring up the next couple of speakers, I do want to mention, we've talked a little bit about the Commissioner of Public Lands and that very close primary race that there was. Commissioner of Public Lands oversees the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, and as you know, living up here, the DNR manages all of the publicly owned timberland in the state. And for decades, through most of our state's history, that was a very robust and effective source of money to the state and to local governments, counties and school districts and fire districts and libraries. And in the last 20, 25 years, it's been mismanaged to the point where it's not really generating any significant money. And instead, all those entities, the county governments and the school districts and the fire districts and the libraries and everything, hospitals, just have to come to Olympia and try to get tax revenue to support them. We want to see the timber harvests and the proceeds from those, the money you get from selling the timber, revitalized and generating meaningful money back into our public coffers. And the candidate that we have for Commissioner of Public Lands is the former Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler. And she's in a race. We had hoped we were going to have two Republicans. She won the primary by a large stretch. But that race that was 49 votes, that was for second place. And remember, we have a top two primary system in the state. So the real race there was for second place. And it was a Republican, the other Republican in the race, and an incredibly far left King County Council member. And it was neck and neck. It was a very close race. There was a lot going on. There was that phone app that came into play there. There was a lot of stuff that happened. The second Republican ended up losing, falling 49 votes short. So Jamie Herrera Butler will be against the King County councilor, who's, I don't know if the fellow's even ever set foot in a public temple. I mean, he is downtown Seattle through and through. He is the farthest thing from a real public lands commissioner that there could be. So Jamie Herrera Butler is the one we like for Commissioner of Public Lands. Next up, I want to have Sharon Hannock come up. Sharon is running for state treasurer. Like all of these positions, or many of them, in some states, the treasurer is appointed by the governor, or certain elements of what the treasurer does are handled by appointees of the governor. Here in our state, we elect the treasurer, and the treasurer is responsible for basically managing the finances, including the bonds, the debt that the state has rightly issued. And we've had a bunch of lawyers as state treasurer in our history, including the current incumbent, Sharon's opponent, a lawyer. I think we could.
Ferguson.
Huh?
Who worked for Ferguson.
Right. The current treasurer was a protege of Bob Ferguson. Sharon is a CPA. She's an accountant. And I think the treasurer should be an accountant, not a lawyer.
Exactly.
That having been said, Sharon Hannock, take it away. Tell us about state treasurer.
That off to the concept, which is one of my final talking points, but it's going to be my first tonight, is when you're doing your budget, who do you want to help you? An accountant, a CPA, or a lawyer?
CPA.
And it's a CPA. And I bring that up because even a clock, which is right twice a day, Seattle Times actually said it should be logical that you would have a CPA as your state treasurer instead of an attorney. They wrote that into the newspaper, but they said, but he hasn't done a bad job, so we're endorsing him. That's kind of what. So I would start off first, I'm glad to be here again. The last time I was here, I was in, I think, your office and talking about initiatives. And so there's a lot of things that I've done in the past. I've been known as Research Mom. I talk about elections. I talk about initiatives. talk about education issues. And way long time ago, for your old timers, I don't know if you remember when Clint did here, and I think I was here, and we talked about Agenda 21
Yep.
to try to stop it, and packed a whole room, some room somewhere in Squim, I remember it was. But that's my comfort zone, to be behind the scenes, to be talking about different actions that we need to stop. Usually we are in a defensive mode. But this time, when I saw that there's nobody running for state treasurer, I called Jim up and I said, do you have anybody in mind? And he said, not yet. I said, I'll call you on Wednesday and make a decision. And I did. On Wednesday, I jumped into this race. 12 years ago, same situation. There was a Democrat incumbent treasurer. He was an economic professor, and he was running unopposed. And I had some friends come to me and say, you should run. And I said, I can't run. It's June, past filing week. And they said, run as a write-in. Took a while for God to pound it into me. So I'll tell you, when I ran the first time, I asked the Lord, hit me on the head with a 2x4, because I really don't want to do this, and I'm really dumb, and so I don't want to run. And he did. So the next time around, I said, if you ever want me to run again, you have to hit me on the head with a 4x8. And so, as I said, there was no 4x8 in 2012 in May in filing week. But I had been praying for a 4x8 as the sign for me to know that God was in it. Well, I did run a write-in campaign. I did win that write-in campaign. And in August, when it certified, I realized I'm really a candidate. I need to start running around the state and doing things and going to county fairs, like four a week was the county fairs that I've been doing this year. And then it hit me as I'm driving across I-90, big, open plains, this is between Ritzville and Ritzville and Vantage, that I said to the Lord, I hope you know, I'm running now. I hope this was your idea. And it just hit me. He got me a win with 32,000 votes. What is 4 times 8? 32. The minute it hit me that I had been praying since my first run for 4 years, that I would say, hit me on the head with a 4x8. And then I won with 32,000 votes.
4x8.
And that's my 4x8. So I knew I was supposed to run that race, but God doesn't promise you're going to win. But He does prepare you, because I've run a statewide race before. I'm a little familiar with it. I have sat through editorial board meetings. I had already decided what my messaging was going to be to the public so that I would be consistent on it. And my messaging for you and to the public and to everyone else, and this is what all of you can take with you when you talk to your friends that are undecided, maybe they're even Democrats. Say to them, do you want a CPA or do you want a lawyer? Because we are at a time right now, there has never been a CPA from the private sector in that job as state treasurer ever in the history of Washington state treasurers. For 4 years, we had Dwayne Davidson, who was a wonderful treasurer. He was a CPA, and he was the treasurer of Benton County. He had great ideas, he had great instincts. He also had a great mindset, because accountants think a certain way. And so he was somebody I also went to and said, should I do this? And he was very supportive and endorsed me and has given me a lot of information about this run for my race. And it is that the treasurer, the accountant way of thinking, they think in terms of checks and balances. If you give me a list of numbers, I'm going to add it up. And I added up a list of numbers with the transportation, for numbers on transportation from the Office of Financial Management. And it didn't add up. So I called them up and I said, we're working on a transportation bill here in Olympia. I'm looking at it to see what kind of testimony I'm going to make for fiscal notes, and your numbers don't add up. By afternoon, it added up. I'm not going to say what, I don't know if it's a typo or what happened, but that LEAP committee report added up by the end of the day. That's the kind of thing. I looked at election numbers, and I added every county numbers, and it got to a grand total of how many people voted, and that didn't add up. That one bothers me. I don't know why it didn't add up. But then I gave that to Glenn Morgan, and he talked to some auditors, so I'm going to let them investigate that one. But that's the way accountants think. We add up numbers. We have checks and balances. If you give me a list of numbers, I'm going to foot and cross-foot it. And if any of you know the lingo.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm looking at these audit reports from the state auditor's office. $1.1 billion of COVID money is being mismanaged.
Yep. Yep.
We have $900,000 in Morton that just got stolen. There's another set of numbers in one of the ports, maybe around here, where there was mismanagement. Money that should have gone into the till may not have made it to the till from ferry systems. I'm not sure what it was. They weren't even billing correctly. And over again, if you read audit reports, and I don't recommend it unless you want to go to sleep, it says that it does not have adequate internal controls, adequate internal accounting controls, adequate controls. Everything about what's being mismanaged is that we do not have a good control system over the processes of managing money. Or I should say, maybe it exists, but no one is watching it. So I go and I get interviewed by all these newspapers now, the Columbian, the Everett Herald, Seattle Times, and I focus on, I can be that person that understands financial accounting systems and that can set up and help guide agencies to be sure they have their internal control system. And that's why the Seattle Times said, Sharon Hannick is an accountant who emphasizes her eagle eye for numbers and experience in identifying budgets that don't add up. They actually said that. They went on to say, no doubt, many state agencies and school districts could benefit from stricter financial oversight. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're actually going to endorse me. But no such thing.
Of course not.
But that is the role of the state auditor. And as you will hear, because we have an auditor in the room coming up next, the role of auditor is to maintain that third-party independence. And they go in and they check things out. But if they were in a position to be able to fix the system, then that removes third-party independence. Corporations get an outside CPA firm to come and do their audits. But that CPA firm cannot come in and fix it because it is the management's responsibility. In fact, the auditor, when they audited the Treasury Department, said the Office of State Treasurer is responsible for keeping the books and managing taxpayers' money from the time it's collected in taxes until it is spent on programs funded by the legislature.
Does the state auditor have any control over the counties?
They can audit counties, and you can ask Matt more of those questions. But I just want to say, so all the financial money is actually under the control of the state treasurer's office. However, every newspaper has told me, that's not your job. And I'm wondering, then whose job is it? Because it's not the governor's job, it's not the Secretary of State's job, it's not the independent auditor's job. And I think that's what's been going on all these years, is that everyone's going, oh, that's not my job. You're supposed to, no, he's doing it. And no one is doing it. So that's one thing that as I go into this role, the treasurer also handles investments to make sure that you have good funding for all the programs, especially retirement programs, the GET programs, and other programs. Some of them, the current treasurer is introducing a lot of programs that I look at as expansion of government, and it could be a welfare program in the long term, baby bonds, things like that. So I have concerns about those. But the other side of it is making sure that we don't overextend our lending. And so that's the three roles: investment, lending, and cash flow management. Cash flow management is one aspect that has not happened, and I want to make it happen. But I have to get there to Olympia to make it happen. we are in this world now where we're Republicans. And usually Republicans can get 41% of the vote. But I think a lot of our friends have moved to Texas, moved to Tennessee. And I'm beginning to think now we're looking at 11% more that we have to get to win a race. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is to really focus, as this last month, on advertisements with communities that might actually read their newspapers. Because I don't have enough funding for all the TV ads. Communities such as the Latino community, especially the Asian community in Seattle. So I'm trying to place ads in all these communities. And I know that when I had my kids, I would read my local newspaper because I want to know if my kid's baseball score got in the newspaper. So I'm looking at some of those smaller communities, Enumclaw Herald, Sumner Herald, Bonnie Lake. I'm sure there's small papers around the state. And so I'm looking at placing ads. And the ads will actually be this one that quotes the Seattle Times. However, again, just like all of us, we do need our money. But that's my strategy for getting that 11%. Coming out of those communities that may not normally vote Republican, but maybe if they see an ad in the paper that says this lady's an accountant, this lady can do the numbers, that might make a difference. There is no strong loyalty to the treasurer's office or the auditor's office. But what I want to do is say, these are offices where your skill counts, your experience counts. And when I was in Port Townsend last month, a while ago, and just on the street talking to different people, I actually got some people to vote for me. Most of them were Democrats. But when we talk about money, money is not party line. Money should not matter about if you are a Republican or Democrat. It should matter, can you do the job? And so I believe that if we talk to our friends that way and let them know, do you want a CPA to do your books? Then vote for me and let other people know that. Thank you.